I never thought my life would take such a dramatic turn at this age. I always considered myself a respectable woman, dedicated to my family and my principles. My daughter Emily was my pride, and when she married Jason 5 years ago, I felt our family was complete. He seemed like the perfect son-in-law, attentive, caring, and always willing to help. But appearances can be deceiving, and I would soon discover that kind smiles can hide much darker intentions. It all started so subtly that I barely noticed it at first. Visits to Emily and Jason's house had always been pleasant, filled with laughter and friendly conversations, but little by little, I began to notice changes in Jason's behavior towards me. His glances became more intense, his compliments more frequent, and his gestures closer than they should be. At first, I told myself I was imagining things Jason had always been, kind, and perhaps he was just being more attentive now that we knew each other better. But as time passed, it became impossible to ignore the tension growing between us. One afternoon, while helping Emily in the kitchen, Jason came in with the excuse of getting a glass of water. He came closer than necessary, brushing my arm as he reached for the cupboard. The contact, though brief, sent an electric shock through my body. Our eyes met for an instant, and I saw a desire in his that left me breathless. I quickly moved away, confused and alarmed by my own reaction. From that moment on, every encounter with Jason became a test of my willpower. His insinuations became bolder, finding moments for us to be alone and complimenting me beyond simple courtesy. He would touch my hand when passing objects, letting the contact linger longer than necessary. His voice would lower when addressing me, laden with a meaning I refused to acknowledge. I felt trapped in a nightmare. On one hand, there was the crushing guilt of feeling attracted to my daughter's husband. On the other, a part of me, a part I thought had been dormant for a long time, responded to his advances with an intensity that terrified me. Every night, as I lay down next to my husband, I felt like an imposter, unable to share the torment consuming me. I tried to distance myself, make fewer visits, invent excuses not to be alone with Jason, but he always found a way to get close, to create those moments of intimacy that left me trembling and confused. One night, during a family dinner, I felt his foot brush against mine under the table. The contact was so unexpected that I dropped my fork, drawing everyone's attention. Jason looked at me with an innocent smile, as if nothing had happened, while I struggled to regain my composure. The situation reached its critical point during Emily's birthday. We had organized a small gathering at her house, and I offered to help with the preparations. I arrived early, expecting to find Emily, but it was Jason who greeted me at the door. Emily had to go pick up the cake, he informed me with a smile that made my heart race. But come in, we can start decorating. I entered cautiously, aware that we were alone in the house. As we placed the garlands and balloons, Jason kept finding excuses to get close, to brush my hand or my waist. The air became increasingly dense, charged with a tension that threatened to explode at any moment. Finally, as we hung a banner in the living room, Jason turned to me, his eyes burning with an intensity that paralyzed me. "I can't keep pretending," he whispered, dangerously approaching. "I've been thinking about you for months, dreaming about you. I know you feel it too." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Part of me wanted to run, scream, deny everything, but another part, a part I was ashamed to acknowledge, wanted to surrender to that forbidden desire. "This is wrong," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "Think about Emily, about your marriage." Jason took another step, cornering me against the wall. I could feel the heat of his body, smell his cologne, and my mind was clouding with each passing second. "Just one kiss," he murmured, leaning towards me. "One kiss. And if you tell me you feel nothing, I'll never mention it again." I closed my eyes, torn between desire and guilt. His lips were millimeters from mine when the sound of a car parking startled us. We sprang apart just as the door opened and Emily entered with the cake. The rest of the party was torture. I smiled and conversed, but inside I was devastated. Every time I looked at Emily, at my husband, I felt I was betraying them. And Jason acted as if nothing had happened, being the perfect host and devoted husband. His ability to pretend only increased my confusion and guilt. The following days were hell of indecision and self-reproach. I couldn't stop thinking about how close I had been to crossing a line of no return. I tormented myself, thinking about what would have happened if Emily hadn't arrived at that moment. Would I have had the strength to reject Jason? Or would I have succumbed to temptation, destroying my marriage and my daughter's happiness in a moment of weakness? I decided I needed to get away. To put physical and emotional distance, I told my husband we needed a vacation, just the two of us. He, oblivious to my inner torment, happily agreed. We spent 2 weeks on the coast, and I desperately tried to reconnect with him, to remember why we had married, why I loved him. But Jason's shadow stood between us, a secret that was corroding me from within. Upon returning, I hoped to feel stronger, more determined to end this madness. But one call from Emily inviting us to dinner was enough for all my repressed fears and desires to resurface. The dinner was a test of my resistance. Jason was there, of course, being the perfect host. But his eyes constantly sought me out, and every time our gazes crossed, I felt short of breath. At one point, while Emily was in the kitchen and my husband in the bathroom, Jason approached me with the excuse of refilling my glass. "I've missed you," he whispered, so low I could barely hear him. "I haven't stopped thinking about you for a single day." I wanted to respond, to tell him to stop, that this couldn't continue. But the words got stuck in my throat. At that moment, Emily returned with dessert, and Jason went back to his seat as if nothing had happened. That night, in the privacy of our bedroom, my husband noticed something wasn't right. He asked if something was wrong, if I was worried about something. For a moment, I was about to confess everything, to free myself from this weight that was destroying me. But the fear of losing him, of destroying our family, made me keep silent once again. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I lived in a constant state of anxiety, fearing every encounter with Jason, but at the same time, secretly longing for them. I hated myself for it, felt dirty and traitorous. My relationship with Emily became tense. She noticed something had changed, though she couldn't imagine what it was during a rainy afternoon when everything exploded. I had gone to Emily's house to help her with preparations for a friend's baby shower. I didn't expect Jason to be there, but when I arrived, Emily informed me she had to urgently go out to pick up some missing materials. "Jason will help you with whatever you need," she told me before leaving us alone. The silence that followed her departure was deafening. Jason and I looked at each other, aware that we were alone for the first time since that almost kiss on Emily's birthday. The tension was palpable, the air so thick you could almost cut it with a knife. "We should start with the decorations," I said, trying to maintain a normal tone, to act as if nothing was happening. Jason nodded, and we began to work in silence, but every time our hands brushed while passing materials, every time our bodies came closer than necessary, I felt I was on the edge of a precipice. Finally, as we hung a garland, our eyes met, and all the repressed desire, all the tension accumulated for months exploded. Before I could react, Jason kissed me. It was a desperate kiss, full of passion and guilt in equal parts. For a moment, I lost myself in that sensation, forgetting everything else. But as quickly as it had begun, it ended. I pulled away abruptly, horrified by what had just happened. "No," I said, my voice shaking. "This can't happen. Never." Jason looked at me, his eyes a mixture of desire and regret. "I'm sorry," he murmured. I shouldn't have done that, but I can't deny what I feel for you." "This is wrong," I replied, struggling to keep calm. "Think about Emily, about your unborn child. We can't do this." At that moment, we heard the sound of keys in the door. Emily had returned. We quickly separated, trying to act normally, but the i.e. damage was already done. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. Guilt consumed me. I couldn't look Emily in the eyes without feeling I was betraying her. My husband noticed something was wrong, but I was still unable to confess the truth to him. It was a week later when everything crumbled. We were having dinner as a family, Emily, Jason, my husband and me. The conversation flowed normally, but I could barely concentrate, aware of every movement Jason made, of every furtive glance. Suddenly, Emily stood up, her face pale. "I have something to tell you," she announced, her voice trembling. We all looked at her, expectantly. I felt my heart was about to jump out of my chest, fearing the worst. "I'm pregnant," Emily said, a nervous smile on her face. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. I saw the surprise on Jason's face, the joy on my husband's, and then the reality of what we had been about to do hit me with all its force. "That's wonderful, honey," I managed to say, standing up to hug my daughter. But as I hugged her, my eyes met Jason's. I saw in them the same shock, the same understanding of how close we had been to destroying something precious. That night, after dinner, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, with this secret poisoning everything I loved. I waited for my husband to go to bed and then sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea cooling between my hands. I thought about Emily, about the life growing inside her. I thought about my husband, about the years we had shared, about the love I still felt for him, and I thought about Jason, about the attraction that had been about to ruin everything. With trembling hands, I took out my phone and wrote a message to Jason. What happened between us was a mistake for everyone's sake, especially Emily's and your future child's. We must forget it and move on. We won't talk about this again. I ask you to respect this decision. I sent the message and then, with a sigh, deleted Jason's number from my contacts. It was a small step, but I felt it was the beginning of my redemption. The following months were difficult. Every time I saw Emily, with her growing belly, I felt a mixture of joy and remorse. Jason kept his distance, respecting my decision. Our interactions became formal, almost cold, but it was better that way. I focused on my marriage, on reconnecting with my husband. I suggested we take dance classes together, something we had always wanted to do. Little by little, I felt we were finding each other again, that the love we had shared for so many years was blooming again. The day my grandson was born was one of the most emotional of my life. Holding that little being in my arms, I felt I was given a second chance. I looked at Emily, exhausted but radiant, and at Jason, proud and emotional, and knew I had made the right decision. That night, back home, my husband hugged me from behind as we looked out the window. "It's been an incredible day," he said, kissing my cheek. "Are you okay? You seem thoughtful." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the secrets I had kept for so long. At that moment, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. "We need to talk," I said softly, turning to look him in the eyes. "There's something I need to confess to you." I saw concern grow on his face, but also the determination to listen to what I had to say. We sat on the couch, and with my heart beating strongly, I began to speak. I told him everything. Jason's insinuations, my own confused feelings, the kiss that almost destroyed our family. As I spoke, tears ran down my cheeks, but I forced myself to continue, to face the truth I had been avoiding for so long. My husband listened in silence, his face a mask of contained emotions. When I finished, the silence that followed was deafening. I waited, fearing his reaction, preparing for the worst. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm, but I could feel the pain behind his words. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "I was afraid," I confessed. "Afraid of losing you, of destroying our family. I thought I could handle it alone, that it would pass. But I was wrong, and I'm so sorry." My husband stood up and walked to the window, turning his back on me. The silence stretched for what seemed like an eternity. When he finally turned back to me, I saw a mixture of pain and determination in his eyes. "I'm not going to lie to you," he said. "This hurts. It hurts that you didn't trust me enough to tell me before. But I also understand the fear and confusion you must have felt." He sat down next to me again, taking my hands in his. "We've been through a lot together. I'm not going to let this destroy us. But we need to work on this together." His words were like a balm for my tormented soul. We hugged, crying together, beginning the long process of healing and rebuilding trust. The following months were difficult. We had long conversations, some painful, others full of hope. We decided to seek professional help, and the couple therapy sessions helped us address not only this incident, but also other issues we had been ignoring for years. Meanwhile, my relationship with Emily and Jason also had to evolve. I decided to be honest with Emily, telling her a softened version of what had happened. It was a painful conversation, full of tears and reproaches, but also of love and finally, forgiveness. Emily, showing a maturity that surprised me, decided to work on her marriage with Jason, understanding that we all make mistakes. My interaction with Jason became strictly formal and limited to family gatherings. He respected my wishes and kept his distance, focusing on his role as husband and father. As time passed, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Honesty, although painful at first, had been liberating. My relationship with my husband, far from being destroyed, strengthened. We learned to communicate better, to trust each other in a deeper way. Watching my grandson grow became one of the greatest joys of my life. Each smile, each small achievement was a reminder of how close I had been to losing all this. I dedicated myself to being the best grandmother and mother I could be, grateful for the second chance I had been. Given a year after my confession, my husband and I renewed our vows in a small ceremony with our closest family. As we looked into each other's eyes, repeating our promises with a new understanding and a deeper appreciation, I felt we were truly beginning a new chapter in our lives. That night, as we danced slowly in our garden under the stars, my husband whispered in my ear, "I'm proud of us, of what we've overcome, of what we've built." I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling a peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. "Me too," I softly replied, "I love you more than ever." And it was true. The path had been difficult, full of obstacles and moments of doubt, but in the end, I had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of honesty, communication, and the true meaning of love and commitment. As the soft music enveloped us and the dim lights of the garden shone around us, I realized that this experience, as painful as it had been, had led us to a better place. We had faced a storm and had come out stronger on the other side. I looked towards the house, where I could see Emily and Jason cooing to their baby, and felt a wave of gratitude. Despite our mistakes, despite the moments of weakness, we had managed to preserve what was most important: our family. That night, as I lay down next to my husband, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. I knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, that there would still be moments of doubt and difficulty. But I also knew we had the tools and the strength to face them together. I closed my eyes, grateful for the lessons learned, for the rediscovered love, and for the opportunity to start anew. My last reflection before falling asleep was that sometimes it's necessary to face our greatest fears and mistakes, to find our true strength and the true meaning of love. The next morning, I woke up with a new determination. I decided it was time not only to heal the wounds of the past, but also to actively build a better future. I began to get more involved in the community, volunteering at a local centre for women in crisis. Sharing my experience, albeit anonymously, helped other women facing similar dilemmas, and I discovered that helping others was a powerful way to continue my own healing process. My relationship with Emily also blossomed in an unexpected way. Our mutual honesty had brought us closer, and we now shared a deeper bond. We spent more time together, not just as mother and daughter, but as friends and confidants. Seeing her strength in handling her own marriage and motherhood filled me with pride and inspired me to be better every day. Over time, family gatherings ceased to be moments of tension and once again became occasions for joy and celebration. Jason and I managed to establish a cordial and respectful relationship centered on our shared love for Emily and our grandson. Although we never returned to the familiarity of before, we found a balance that allowed our family to function harmoniously. My husband, for his part, constantly surprised me with his capacity for forgiveness and his commitment to our marriage. Together, we discovered new passions. We began to travel more, to explore places we had always wanted to visit but never found the time. Each trip was an adventure, an opportunity to reconnect and create new memories together. One afternoon, as we were walking through a park near our home, my husband stopped and looked at me with a smile. "You know," he said, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm almost grateful for what happened." I looked at him surprised. "What do you mean?" "It forced us to face problems we had been ignoring for years," he explained. "It made us work on our relationship in a way we had never done before. And look at us now, we're stronger than ever." His words deeply moved me. He was right. Despite the pain and difficulties, this experience had led us to a better place, more honest and deeper in our relationship. As we continued our walk, I reflected on the long road we had traveled. From those moments of temptation and confusion to the painful confession and then the hard work of rebuilding trust and love. Each step had been a challenge, but each one had brought us closer to the true essence of our love. That night, as I prepared for bed, I looked at my reflection in the mirror and saw a different woman from the one I had been a few years ago. A wiser woman, stronger, more at peace with herself. I understood that our experiences, even the most painful ones, give us the opportunity to grow and evolve. I lay down next to my husband, grateful for his presence, for his unwavering love. As I fell asleep, I thought about all the lessons I had learned, about the importance of honesty, the strength of true love, the power of forgiveness, and people's capacity to change and grow. My last reflection before falling into a deep sleep was that life, with all its challenges and surprises, is a journey of continuous learning, and that love, true love, is capable of overcoming even the most difficult tests.